This time we came and I walked in the door and used an expletive starting with You make yourself comfortable and rationalise the fear, complete fear.
So you're scared of heights.
Yep.
You don't like falling.
Yeah.
Decided to take up this sport where you climb up. A big part of the sport is probably falling off. So you kind of did your first climb. How was that?
It was like an Elvis impression. As soon as I had a foot off the ground, everything was shaky.
When you get on the wall today, what is it that makes you want to climb?
Well, there's two. One is 2019 diagnosed with prostate cancer. I look 85, but I can climb just as well as I think a 40-year-old. Put it like this way, if you took climbing away, I'd feel a big empty hole. Yeah, I sort of just gave up. I said, I've got prostate cancer, what can go wrong?
Hello, welcome back to Talking Vertical, your go-to lifestyle podcast for climbing. We're introducing a new series today where we talk about sort of mini stories and stories from the community within climbing. Today we are talking to my father of all people, which is...
yeah, that's me. My name's John Steele. Been climbing for about 10 years and 64 years old and thoroughly enjoying the experience and challenges.
Nice. So the plan of this podcast, the new format, is that we're going to take a deeper dive into people's climbing stories, what brings them to climbing, challenges they face, why they've carried on climbing, and anything more. It's quite an open format. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please give us a like and a rating at the end of the podcast if that's what you're feeling. Should we jump into it?
I think that would be a good idea.
So tell me about your introduction into climbing. What was it that first got you into climbing? What drew you into climbing?
So I used to play hockey, played all my life, and about 10 years ago suffered from pain in the back after a game. Advised by the GP to give up hockey, as I'm not an international player, so why would you carry on playing if you're in pain on a Sunday morning? And I knew you'd been climbing, and you suggested I go along to try some bouldering, and started from there. And there's evolved into rope climbing since, for reasons we'll probably develop as we go through.
Nice. Nice. I guess when you first started climbing, how was it for you? Was it, did you just turn up and climb? Was it challenging? Was it easy? How did you find your first climbing experience?
Yeah, I think the first time we came was to Reading Climbing Centre, now called Parthian. And I walked in the door and used an expletive starting with F because I looked up into the distant sky and the height, and it scared me silly. We tried a bit of rope climbing, top rope climbing to start with, and then went to bouldering because the height was just a bit too much because I have a fear of heights, which is quite limiting in many respects. And to the point, when we went outdoor climbing, I couldn't even get to the bottom of the cliff because it was along what I deemed to be a very scary route.
Yeah, so I guess we can expand on that and sort of say, is your fear of heights something that you've had your whole life? Where has that developed? Where do you think that started from?
Yeah, I think it developed from a fear of flying and me finding a reason why I didn't like flying and almost choosing that it was the fear of heights, which probably isn't true. It's just me trying to find a reason for not being able to do something. But that evolved into not being able to drive along cliff edges or look over cliff edges. I used to walk a lot in the Lake District because we lived there. But even going for a walk in the Lake District now, I have to research it to make sure there are no edges. Otherwise, I have to come back down again, which is a bit dispiriting given the views you can get if you can get yourself to the top of the hill or mountain.
So that fear of heights is still very much a theme in your life. You still haven't, say, conquered that per se.
No, I don't. It's probably a bit like being an alcoholic or something like that. I don't think you ever overcome it.
Yeah.
You make yourself comfortable and rationalise the fear, because it's probably the fear more than the edges. And it's a sense of falling, so it's an edges thing for me rather than just a fear of heights.
So you think it's the fear of the falling, you think you associate the pain of hitting the floor, you associate the motion of falling? What do you think the actual fear comes down to?
It's the motion of falling. Okay. I can look out of a plane window, look down, and I don't have a fear of heights.
Okay.
It could be because we're moving in a horizontal direction at great speed. So no, it's the sensation of falling, which I get if I go on a swing. The downward sensation I hate. it's like the sensation of being in a car with someone driving very fast and I'm in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
Complete fear about it. And it could be to do with motion in the ear, because I have dodgy ears and suffer from labyrinthitis quite a lot, which is a sense of falling when you're just sitting in a chair or something. So it could be a combination of all those things creates a sensation I don't like.
So you're scared of heights.
Yep.
You don't like falling.
Yeah.
So you decided to take up this sport where you climb up, and a big part of the sport is probably falling off.
So it coincided with me seeking help to get me back in a plane, which had some psychotherapy, which then went into the depths of the cause of that fear, rather than just trying to deal with managing the fear itself. And so I was around that time seeking challenges, because that's the way I was sort of being pushed into, to look over the edge and see what happens.
Yeah.
Did you fall? Yeah. And climbing was a perfect extension of that, really.
Okay, so did you first climb? How was that when you first got on the wall? Did you find the fears disappeared, or did it take?
No, I think it was like an Elvis impression. As soon as I had a foot off the ground, everything was shaking, completely rigid on the wall, pulling myself up with my arms, not worrying about the feet hitting the wall. I'm not sure I got to the top very early on any climb.
No.
And a fear of when I climb, I'm not going to fall. So that was quite a challenge over the last few years, is you can fall and you can fall safely. And it's still there as I go up harder routes, is I don't want to fall.
Yeah.
So hence I think why we moved to bouldering, because bouldering was much smaller heights and you could fall and you didn't hurt yourself.
So your evolution of climbing, you started on ropes climbing and then you moved to more bouldering stuff. And you think that was through your, I guess, logical brain saying it's not as high, so it's not as scary.
Yeah, but I enjoyed the concept of climbing as a fitness way of keeping fit. Challenge yourself a bit like a game of chess, trying to find the right route, and also realising that with a little bit of technique you can progress quite rapidly and not be as tired.
Yeah.
Because tiring pumped arms and that sort of thing often comes through poor technique.
Okay, so I guess there must have been a bug that you got when you started climbing, and that must have come through, you say, the fitness element, but that problem-solving aspect. So expand on that.
Yeah, I think I've always done fitness. I've run my whole life, done a couple of marathons, not particularly good at running, but always wanted to be fit and enjoy physical fitness. So climbing gives you that. And if you're bad at it, you get more physical fitness out of it. But it's not soon. After a few years, you realise that the technique you learn requires you to think about what you're doing. You can't just come to a wall and try and climb it, but you can. But you just get very tired and you don't progress, and then you get frustrated. And so, fortunately, because you're a coach, you could give me some easy clues as to how to progress,
I guess.
And those clues suggest to you, well, think about your feet, think about your arms, think about body position. And slowly over time, you see the benefit, and then you realise you're progressing. So something must be going right, and you're not as tired.
Okay, so you've clearly been 10 years down the line, carried on climbing.
Yes. two
themes are that have kept you climbing? Why, when you get on the wall today, what is it that makes you want to climb?
Well, there's two. One is an external thing. You can climb in any weather if you climb indoors.
Yeah.
Which is quite an incentive, because most of my activities over my life have always been outdoors. So today it's absolutely pouring down. You couldn't run, you couldn't cycle, unless you're a sadomasochistic person, and at 64 I'm not going to do that. So therefore you can go to the venue knowing that you can keep out of the wet.
Yeah.
And secondly, you can go in there and do many different approaches. So if I'm by myself, I'll do auto belays and treat it as a fitness session, or if I'm with you, we might do some top rope, or if you push me, I'll do some lead climbing. Each of which is like a separate sport. It has to be using a rope and holds, but to me, it challenged me. One will be very mentally challenging, the other would be purely fitness.
Okay.
So it's invariable.
So you've carried it on, and when you're climbing, how do you feel? What does it feel like to climb?
It's most climbs I'll go through a Christ, why am I doing this? Total fear and not be able to move.
Yeah.
But but then pursue it and get through it, and then come to the floor, be feeling pretty good about it, that I've done something, then look back up and think, did I really climb that? Surely something was pulling me up, something was keeping me on the wall. And so it's quite exhilarating like that. It's exhilarating per climb, and at the end of a climb, it's very exhilarating as well, because you've achieved something. You nearly always have a sense of achievement when you go climbing, which you don't get in many other sports.
No,
every time.
Okay. Do you find it's an escape from life? Escape from drama, escape from emotional?
Yes, because I think, but you hear people talk about living in the moment, mindfulness and all that sort of thing. When you walk in a climbing centre, that all falls away. Because for me, it doesn't have to. It just naturally does, because you're focusing on a single route or a group of people who are only talking about climbing. They're not talking about anything but what they've done. They might have a joke about 2 or 3 things. And the people I know nothing about them, but I seem to know them quite well. But it's because you're there to climb, not to really do anything else.
Okay. Has there been any sort of monumental aspects or big life dramas or how do I say it? Yeah, things that have caused you issues in your life that has climbing helped you get through?
Yeah, so I've got 2019 diagnosed with prostate cancer. Told at that point most men die with prostate cancer but don't die of it. You'd be a mad fool to do anything, but 2 years later I had to do something. And the prostate cancer is not physically debilitating, and climbing allows you just to become normal again, where you can forget all about it and for that brief moment think you're still 34, 24 or whatever, climbing routes. And I might look 85, but I can climb just as well as I think a 40-year-old. Obviously, there's a gross generalisation. So age doesn't seem to be a thing. It seems to fall away again when you climb. So it takes your mind away from it.
Great. And do you think that's something that those learnings that you've had, that you can carry on doing these things, does that impact you in the rest of your life, or do you feel that climbing doesn't really teach you life experiences?
Well, I think you put it like this way. If you took climbing away, I'd feel a big empty hole.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I retired in June last year, is after I'd retired, I thought it'd be easy. I'd fill my life with all these things, but you suddenly realise you've no structure. So saying you're going climbing Monday, Wednesday and Friday in the morning gives you a structure to the week. And I thought it would only last for an hour, but we often come climbing or come climbing with someone else and it could be 3 or 4 hours. And there's a coffee, cafeteria, so you can sit. We never have a rest. I tend to continue climbing and then stop and then maybe have lunch or something like that. Although I could have a coffee mid-morning and start again.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure whether I would do that, but I'm not sure why I wouldn't do it.
I think that part of that is, so we obviously climb together, is I like to continuously climb because I found personally energy levels drop when I stop climbing. If I stop for a coffee and go back to climb again, not much happens after it. That's just my personal...
Yeah, no, I suppose for me it's quite intense. You have to work yourself up to it, get climbing.
And it's like any sport. You've got to warm up. You've got to be... You can't just expect to climb after taking half an hour off. You know, if you ran a marathon, took a half an hour break and then jumped straight back on it, you're not going to probably
that's not
be going at the same speed, are you?
No, and so therefore it works quite well that you can do a couple of hours and then rest and then go home, and I don't know, it's very fulfilling. Doesn't really matter what happens the rest of the day then. You filled the day and enjoyed it. So.
Are there any other sort of mental or physical benefits that you find from climbing?
Yeah, you certainly, it's a fitness thing, and it's not, you don't tend to get injured when you're rope climbing, because if you fall off, you hope the rope works. Obviously, if the rope doesn't work, you're going to have a fairly fatal injury, or not a good one. So you learn to trust the rope. So I've never been injured rope climbing. Now, bouldering is a different matter, because I think I need to respect my age when I boulder, to the point now I don't boulder because I've had 2 meniscus injuries.
From bouldering?
Entirely. I mean, it didn't help that when I got the meniscus injury, I carried on running in the knowledge that, well, I'll run through it. You don't run through a meniscus injury. So, one, I had to have it the meniscus tear repaired. And the second time, I slightly more cognizant of what the problem was. Still went running, but not quite as much maybe as I did before. And you can't boulder without being able to fall onto your knees and stuff.
Yeah, it's quite a physical part of climbing, bouldering.
Yeah, and I was just thinking I was 34, do a route and then jump off with great victory celebration, and then over time thinking, oh, my knees aren't quite as good as they were.
Yeah.
And there was nothing else I was doing. And I miss bouldering because I like the short-term pulse of 4 or 5 moves, top, finished. But it certainly helps with the rope climbing. Gives you confidence to go for
Nice.
hold.
Interesting. And it is for others looking to gain these mental, physical, or get over stuff in. Any advice for people starting climbing or people currently climbing?
Yeah, I think my challenge is often going to the climbing centre.
Yeah.
But that's just like starting any activity. Thing will be to get there. And if you're just start climbing. Hopefully go with someone who can give you some basics, but you really only do need some basics to get on the wall and just climb. And climbing's a sport where the more you do, the more you get from it.
Yeah.
And it's just not something you necessarily need to read up about or go out and practice. Climbing is practice is climbing sort of thing. And if you're feeling down about something, try climbing, because it might just take you away for a brief moment. Not as a distraction away from it, but give you a sense of accomplishment, which can then sit alongside any negative thoughts you've got.
Okay, that's cool. I really like that. I think a big part of that is the climbing community is pretty special as well. Has it helped you having a community of people? You know, within climbing, we talk about the fact that everyone has their life, but when you come into a climbing centre, it's all level. Doesn't matter where you're from, what you do. What your mental state is that day. It's all about the climbs. I love that side of stuff. And is that something that's supported you through the challenges?
I think there's no judgment in a climbing centre. You know, you walk in, doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or anything, and it's always positive. I've never come across negative comments about someone who's climbing, even if the centre managers are wandering around just checking people. It's always, if there's a comment, in a positive way. To your advantage, your safety, more than, Christ, you shouldn't be climbing sort of thing. And even if you see someone climbing badly, you don't think of them climbing badly.
No.
You just think, actually, if they put the foot there, they might help them. But you would never point that out unless the person came along and was watching you and they asked you a question, because that would be, it's just not a done thing. And you never hear anyone talk about politics or anything that's happening in the outside world is, I don't know, it seems to stop at the door. I'm not saying you shouldn't talk about that, but it just doesn't happen in a climbing centre. And people are generally, you could talk to a complete and utter stranger and never know their name for 6 months, of which there's a group in Reading. I'm still not sure I know all the names, but it doesn't really matter. They seem to know my name, and they know who you are and they say hello. So,
there's
unique, I think.
That's pretty unique, and that's been fairly consistent, hasn't it, throughout the time we've climbed?
Yeah.
We're very fortunate that the centre where we're filming today is a very friendly centre, but most centres tend to be that way. Is there any changes you have seen in the world of climbing that have bettered the sport, made the sport different in your time?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 things. One is the leisure side has come in, the sort of the broadening of the base of who climbs, particularly on the bouldering. So in Reading, there's a centre called the Hangar Open down Oxford Road, which is purely bouldering. And you'll see an incredible cross-section of people in there enjoying themselves in an evening. And it's a concept, you don't need to have your climbing shoes, you get your climbing shoes there, so you don't need to kit up with everything. You just turn up in your normal kit, put your shoes on and go for a climb.
Nice.
And some of the climbs are like step ladders.
Yeah.
So what? They're still climbs. And some are like in caves with overhangs, and you think, well, I can't even get on the first hole. But you still try. It's probably a bit like playing golf. You can climb on the climb that the world-class people are climbing and appreciate that that's quite good, actually, because I can't even start it. And golf, you can play the same hole as an international, but you're never going to finish it in the number of times they do it. So that's one thing. And the second thing is that with rope climbing, instead of virtually closing the centre and redoing all the lines at one time, they now do them over phases. So there's always some new climbs to have a go at, probably every couple of weeks. Whereas I think when I first started, the climbs could be up for quite a few weeks, if not months. I might be wrong, maybe I just wasn't looking at those. So it's always changing.
Nice.
At the end of the day, it's still a rope and a set of climbs, but that's what's interesting about climbing. Really, you could do the same climb 3 times and do it 3 different ways. One, you get off and you're not tired at all. And like I was doing last week, I was doing a 5B where I fell off it. Now that was partly because I wanted to practice a fall.
Yeah, you sort of almost enjoyed that process, didn't you?
Yeah, I sort of just gave up. I said, I've got prostate cancer, what can go wrong? So I just let go and I survived. Well, that shouldn't be surprising.
No, and that's a really interesting evolution. We started off talking about how when you first started climbing, you were Elvis leg, and now you don't want to fall off, but you almost enjoyed the process of falling.
And I think where climbing takes you, for someone like me, it pushes you to an edge, not a physical edge, a mental edge, where you can keep pushing at that. And if you push against a mental edge and get through it, you get enjoyment from it. And if you don't get through it, you hated or enjoyed not the failure, the learning.
Yeah, nice.
So, because you've got to fail to learn, but in climbing you fail frequently, but you learn from that failure.
Great, and I think that's a great place to finish up. Thank you for being on my podcast. And
Sure.
yeah, no, I hope you guys have enjoyed listening and watching on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you've been listening to this podcast. Send it to someone who might want to start climbing, or just someone who you might find this story interesting. Please give us a rating, please subscribe, and do all of the things, because there's a lot of people who will be listening to this who won't be following us, joining in for our journey. In future episodes, we're going to have more and more interesting guests. By you guys sharing, by you guys following us, we'll be able to push the boundaries of the guests that we can have on, the people that we'll want to be talked to. Thank you for listening, and that's Ascend.